if you look at, I mean, something that I would say is you know, what if Iraq didn't have oil? What if they just took the oil money and pretended that they just didn't have it? How would you actually operate your economy? How would you operate your government? You know, like any other government, any other country that doesn't have oil. You know, how do you make sure that you can provide, you know, the basic needs for your citizens? And if you could take, you know, make plans based on that, and then utilize some of that money to facilitate that. I mean, that's one way that some people have proposed. You know, you would do that, but then you'd have to probably drastically reduce, you know, government, you know, politicians' salaries and things like that. And so
highly inflated. There was the question from this fellow
about the Shell joint venture. 2008, September 2008, Shell and the government of Iraq announced that they signed a heads of agreement, which is kind of a semi-binding memorandum of understanding. They would create a joint venture company that would be tasked with gas. And that was pretty much the extent of what they announced. And then there were some concerns because it was negotiated behind closed doors, the terms were not known, and they were going forward without any competition, and that this would create a monopoly, that it would give Shell or this company exclusive rights to the gas. There were worries about this, that this was what was in the contract, and that they would have exclusive rights and authority to export the gas instead of being used for domestic purposes. Nobody really knew about that until we got a copy of the contract and wrote about it and then published the memorandum or the heads of agreement. And it turned out that the language was leaning towards that it allowed for this to happen. So it was been refined, and they've been negotiating it since 2008 to create the Basra Gas Company, which would be 51% owned by the government of Iraq, 49% Shell and Mitsubishi, which would be tasked with capturing and treating and utilizing the associated gas produced by the producing oil fields in Basra itself. There have been numerous technical and legal and philosophical questions that have been dealt with, but right now, from what one of the deputy oil ministers told us the other day, is that the main issue is dealing with how to export the gas. If the decision was made to export, how to give guarantees to Shell that there will be exports, how to deal with the legal situation, which basically only authorizes, the State Oil Marketing Organization, SOMO, is the only legal authority to export oil and gas. So how do you kind of make that mesh with what the desires are of these, of an international oil company? And supposedly there's going to be a meeting this week or next week between the lawyers from the Iraqi government and the oil companies, and then it'll be kicked to the Council of Ministers, and if they approve it, then it'll be signed. Which is kind of the same scenario that's been painted kind of month after month for the past few months.
Okay, we'll take one last quick question from our scholar.
Thank you, Kate. I think many of us have been surprised at the creativity of the Iraqi Ministry of Oil in advancing the oil industry without a hydrocarbon law. What are the constraints? How far can this go before the lack of a hydrocarbon law really begins to impinge on Iraqi petroleum aspirations and development?
I mean, I think that it probably boils down to the dispute with the KRG. I mean, they're the only ones who have voiced questions about the authority of the central government to do what it's doing. Then it gets into Parliament, and will the Parliament demand what it claims is its rights to approve the deals based on these existing laws? But in essence and in practice thus far, the central government basically says, we were elected so we can do what we want, and that's democracy. And so it's not going to be that much of a problem unless a group like the KRG or the Parliament steps in and starts to question the legal authority of the steps that have been taken by the ministry and by the government. So it's not necessary, I guess, until it gets properly challenged.
Clearly, Iraq's economic well-being is linked to its political well-being, and how that evolves remains to be seen. Thank you, Ben, for all your time and for your insight.